My name is Meghan Woodard, and I am the head producer. I really like this story because it allowed me to ask myself, how can I stretch my artistic ability so that I can produce the best content that I can? Because that's what the story asks in itself, is how far can artists stretch themselves to produce great content? And so I really enjoy the story because after seeing Daisy kind of do that with Charlie, ask him how far will he go for his art by having a relationship with him, I was able to kind of reflect on that myself and think, okay, how can I, in this project and in future projects, stretch my artistic abilities so that I can create great and meaningful content. So my job on playing ourselves was to figure out locations, to break down the script, to break down a budget so that we can fundraise, to contact actors about logistics, and do lots of paperwork. As like the producer, I was able to kind of do all of the logistics behind the script while Nick focused on like the creative aspect. So as like a line producer, I was behind the scenes managing the film while Nick was diving more into creating the film, if that makes sense. Yes, so I had Peter Mai and Tom Zubicic as two of my associate producers, and then I also had JJ Schindler as an advisor to help in whatever ways that I had questions and whatnot. So for Peter and Tom, I was the one who figured out the different things in like planning for playing ourselves, and then I would delegate to them. Tom helped out with finances and marketing, and then Peter helped out with more of contacting people and grants. So, yeah. I was running around a lot of the time, but I was on set like sometimes. Okay. Like the Friday I was on set, the Balboa Park montage day, I was on set for a good amount of the time. But yeah, most of the days I was kind of just making sure everybody had everything they needed. Yes. Yes. No, all of the locations were really fun, I thought. So like going to Balboa Park, the different locations that Brigitte and Nick scouted out and found were really beautiful. Like I loved the flower garden that they were at because the flowers were just so beautiful. And then being in like the redwood like part of Balboa Park was like, it felt like we were not at Balboa Park, which was really cool. Like to like feel like you were somewhere else. And even like Haley's house, Lexi did such a great job like set decking Haley's house that I'm like, wow, this isn't even Haley's house anymore. So I thought that was amazing. And then being at the motel and the theater was a great experience because they were two different locations that we had never like worked with before. And so being at the motel, they were very accommodating with our filming there. And then the theater was very helpful as well. And booking the theater and the technicians that they had on set, they were really wonderful as well. So the locations that we had were very nice. So I just mainly worked with Nick. I had meetings like with other heads of department, but Nick was the main one since he was the director. But working with Nick was amazing. Every time that I work with Nick is just so like easygoing and I don't know. It's just like he's so talented in what he does, so I don't really have to worry about like his end at all. And he's very helpful in the pre-production stages. So like he was reminding me, "Hey Megan, do we have this?" And helping in the meetings and things like that. So he was very helpful through the pre-production, which made my job a lot easier. So I always love working with Nick because of his like creative ability as well as like his helpfulness in pre-production. So yes, working with Nick was amazing. I also got to like have meetings with Lexi for set deck, and working with Lexi is always great too. I think like all of our crew members were amazing. But yeah, working with Lexi, she always like knows the like what she's going to do. So like the props, she was able to, okay, yeah, I just need this, this, and this, and it was all good. And so working with her, I never like worried about, oh, does Lexi have her props? Like, cause she already was like, yep, I already have them ready to go. So she was very organized in that way. So I always love working with Lexi. I didn't work with like Brigitte one-on-one ever, or even Michael. Yeah. But seeing like them work with Nick was such a great experience because Brigitte and Nick have a very similar vision, so they work together wonderfully. And then Brigitte and Michael work together great as well because they also share like a similar vision. Like when I was on set, I would just see like Brigitte like be like, Michael, can you do this real quick? And Michael would be like, yep, already done. And then she would go to Nick, like, what do we have to do for the scene? Yep, already done. And then so like everything like ran smoothly because of like their communication and the work that they did in like pre-production as well. So yes, I liked experiencing a lot of like the different relationships between like Nick and the heads of departments because he has a great like, what is the word? Like he has a great like charisma and like people skills, I guess, to where he connects with, yeah, personability to where he connects with a lot of different people, which is a great skill to have as a director. The crew was great because there would be like a few early call times, especially like for the theater, because we only had a few like hours, well, relatively a few hours for the amount of scenes that we had to shoot. And so it didn't matter like how many hours we were shooting. They were like happy and willing to be on set and just like create for the like just for creating sake. And so I thought that was really amazing of the team to like wake up every morning and like do their thing, be like hardworking on set, be efficient. Because we ended like every day early. So I was like, nice, which is like a producer's dream. So that was really nice of the crew to be just very hardworking and efficient every day. A lot of the challenges were in pre-production for the most part, just because like we did have a little bit of trouble connecting with like the theater and making sure that our days like would correspond with like their availability. And so that was a little bit of trouble, like contacting the theater and making sure everything was set up. So that was like the biggest thing because fundraising went pretty well. Getting our actors went well. I think it was mainly like the locations and making sure those were set. And then on set, of course, it was Christian's nose that broke. Because that was interesting.
Like, you want to go ahead and talk about that?
Sure. That was quite the experience. Just because they were all like behind, there was like a black curtain that was set up. And so all I see is like a bunch of people rushing out. Christian had his nose covered up. I'm like, oh, I wonder what's happening. And then someone was like, oh yeah, he broke his nose. I'm like, oh, okay. So like the next step, like Nick was coming out. We got to bring him to the hospital. I'm like, great. All right. And so it felt a lot smoother than like internally it felt because I'm like, oh gosh, like I gotta get like things going, like I gotta get him to hospital, think of like insurance and the like all like the logistical things and making sure he was okay. But Nick and Andrew were like such a blessing because they like Andrew was like next to Christian the whole time, like, okay, we got to do this, this, and this. Make sure your nose is okay. Get some water, get some air. Taking care of Christian. Nick was like talking to me about, okay, like how can we figure this out, like with insurance and like taking care of like getting him back to LA and things like that, shooting the next weekend. So it was a very like contained, stressful moment. But everyone did such a great job. Like on set, Marielle was also another like amazing person on set. But she like was like, okay guys, like we're gonna pack up, get going. And so she was definitely like a star player on that day, and every day. But on that day, she definitely like took charge and was able to get things going, like with the theater or with the motel. And then yeah, that one was a good learning experience, driving someone to the hospital and getting their nose fixed. I was there the whole time, figuring out like if he was, because at the hospital they were saying like it could have been like a clean break, so it wouldn't have been too terrible, or it could have been like a lot worse where it'd have to like swell up and like he'd have to like get work done or something like that. But yeah, I was kind of there like making sure like everything went smoothly for like Christian, making sure he was okay, and also making sure like Nick and like Rachel, our actress, who played Daisy, was there as well, like making sure that everything was okay too. So yes. Not a specific moment, but just like something that like the crew and cast like did was just like, or like the trait that they have was just like willingness. I think that like was something that everyone displayed on set, was just like their willingness to, whether it like to help, to get things done, things their willingness to like step in different positions. Another thing that happened was one of our supporting actors, who was supposed to play Isaac, had to drop out at the last minute. And so Julius was like, yeah, I'll step in. And so he was like willing to just step into a role that he was just approached to like the day before. So I thought that was great of him. And then like the willingness for Christian to step up this like the second weekend at the theater when Michael wasn't able to be on set. And so like his stepping up and willingness to help out in gaffing and run the gaffing team. So I thought like just everybody's like willingness on set and like the attitude that everybody brought to set was something that was memorable for me. There'd be times when like at the theater, because that I think was like the most stressful time was when we were at the theater, just so that we got everything on time, that everything was like looked right. And I think like working with Marielle was a great experience because like I would be out and doing stuff, like grabbing food, grabbing more water, something like that. And then I'd come back to set and like check in with Marielle, how we doing? Does anybody need anything? She'd be like, no, got it covered. And like, it was such a relief to like have Marielle have things running smoothly and like all together on set. So I think like she was another person that like I really enjoyed working with, just because she was very good at her job. And so I think, yeah, that was something that I really, that really stood out to me on set. As a producer, things are gonna get stressful. It's just inevitable as like a producer. But it also, like through the stress, it's also important to think about why you're creating, and why you are interested in producing in the beginning, or why you're interested in the story. So I think this was a great story to realize that in, and the whole message of how far will you go for your art as a producer, I was able to think, okay, how far in the midst of the stress will I commit to keeping like the team together or keeping everything running. So I thought that was a great thing to learn amidst playing ourselves. Yeah, no, it was a great experience because there were things that like I hadn't dealt with before, like going to the hospital. But then there are like people that I was able to work with that I got to learn more about their working style or their abilities. And so I thought that was a great experience as well, of like getting to know both my craft and the people that I was working with on set.